All right, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so we're going to do this interview for my curriculum class. But I want to ask you, and I appreciate your time and letting me do this, and I want to ask you a few questions. If you would like to, just start off talking about curriculum as a whole within the Oxford district.
Okay. Well, my initial teaching position was in special ed, and I think that gave me a perspective to see a broad range of grade levels. And, the huge push over the last few years has really been that all students will master a minimum group of standards. And so we really try to be very innovative in Oxford, and we try to make our curriculum relevant and engaging to students, and keep up with the latest and greatest thing. But we also feel like knowing what those standards are and making sure everything that we do that's innovative, that we stay true to, that we are trying to teach the minimum standards and embed those in innovative and 21st century ways. We like to think of ourselves as progressive.
So what is your system for doing that, like horizontally and vertically? And
We start out by, in the summer, it really starts in the summer. We do a lot of curriculum alignment in the summer, and we bring in groups of teachers, and they work together, breaking apart the standards, developing unit plans, developing common formative assessments. And so each year we will take the assessment data and look at the assessment data where we are strong and weak, and we will prioritize, pick power standards that we want to work on for the year. Example, right now we're in the middle of a good amount of work in the area of fractions.
Right.
And so vertically we'll work on those, assess those, talk to each other, plan with each other, go in and observe each other teaching. And so that's how we try to vertically align. And then all of our schedules are built on a horizontal team. So we have a math teacher, science teacher, English language arts teacher, social studies teacher, for the most part in 5 and up, that work together on a team concept. So we, again, they have an opportunity to plan together to try to horizontally align their standards.
Part of that question that talks about engaging all students. Could you tell me a little bit about your student-led conferences that you got going on?
Yes. As a district, we have been studying Ron Berger's work, Leaders of Their Own Learning. All administrators are doing book study, and we have about 3 or 4 teachers and an administrator in each building that's also studying that, have been studying that for the last couple of years. And so one of the things that we kept hearing is students not being motivated. We've been really working on student engagement. And so his work with student ownership intrigued us.
Right.
And so we started studying that and ventured into that. And the calendar committee was so impressed with the student-led conferences and how powerful those could be. The calendar committee, which is represented by teachers, asked if we could have days throughout the year that we could do that district-wide.
Okay. Then one other thing is the shift from grades to skills.
Oh. That again goes in with our vertical piece.
Right.
As we were getting input from our teachers, especially at the high school level, saying that students were getting to the high school level not knowing the standards that they needed. And so as we began to investigate that over the years, we realized that kids were coming to Algebra 1 with no ability to do the fractions.
Right.
And then when you look back at their grades were good.
Right.
And so that again was one of those things that came out of a summer workshop where teachers were working together and started investigating, if we went down the skills assessment pathway, could we ensure that those major standards that are so important be mastered and reported to the parents in a clear fashion. And sometimes the averaging of grades masks that.
One of the things that I've always been impressed with Oxford is willingness to embrace change and take that head on, because I know it's not easy to start with, to get all that going, but it's been effective. I know my first grader can tell me exactly what I have to work on and what I've got down pat, so that was kind of cool coming from her, so.
Well, it is not easy, and with any kind of change, you are met with people that don't understand why you're changing, and I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years, how important it is to take as much time as you have. I mean, time is always an issue, but to work with groups of teachers, work with those people that are involved in it, and have conversations with them on the why we're doing what we're doing. I think that's pretty important.
And that kind of segues us really nicely into our next question. How do you assure that instructional objectives and curricular goals are aligned?
Well, I think that's something that we could always do better at. I would say that is something that we definitely could improve upon. But one of the things is those kind of job-embedded professional development where we have the extra time to plan. We're very fortunate in Oxford that we have that. And getting teachers to plan together. But also, I think it's important that principals and administrators that are evaluating teachers and evaluating lesson plans, they need to have some knowledge of what those objectives are within the class. So we try to involve our administrators as much as possible in our curriculum work. And then we do 3 times a year, we'll go into the buildings and do walkthroughs through the buildings. And we take that as an opportunity to not go in and evaluate, but a learning experience together. And so that we're getting two-way information, and administrators were talking about those objectives. We also do instructional rounds in our district, and we haven't done this in a couple years, but about 3 years ago we had all of our, we had principals, assistant principals, and some teachers do vertical instructional rounds as well.
So you've mentioned the leadership within the building, so what do you do to facilitate and motivate faculty members to adhere to the prescribed state standards?
I think the job-embedded professional development is probably the most effective thing. When you get teachers sitting down side by side, working together to develop their units together,
Right.
And break apart those standards and develop assessments on what does this look like in the classroom. I think that is probably the greatest motivator, because I think a lot of times we think we know what those standards say, but do we really have this common vision of
Right.
what those standards mean? And I think that is probably the most effective thing that I have seen over the years, to do standalone PD on what does this standard mean and here's how you teach the standard. Yeah, that kind of helps, but I think the value is when they're sitting down around a table talking about that.
Right.
It's pretty huge. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
You'll have to splice that one out.
That's all
It's
right.
Ashley, she's home.
That's a good thing.
Yes, it is. And I told somebody, I said, she loves me again, like she wanted to come home. Anyway.
But you know what? I have a little girl named Harper, and she loves me and loves me not quite frequently.
Yes,
so.
I understand. I think that's the female in us.
Yeah. How do you work with all stakeholders to identify instructional and curricular needs that align with the district's shared vision and available resources?
Kind of goes back to what I really believe in, the value of sitting. I think that's the most effective thing you can do, is when you can be a part of a group, and that group is learning together, and it's very focused and intentional on your purpose. And I would say that probably anecdotally, getting that information, hearing straight from the teachers is so valuable, which is hard to do when you're in a central office position, but trying to make yourself available to do that, along with just looking at the data and looking at it historically over time, I think is something that is a way that we kind of evaluate that. And then we have our stakeholders involved in that process, not only the teachers, but we also have students represented, And we have parents represented a couple times a year at our continuous improvement meetings. And we're looking at the data together. We just had a strategic planning meeting last year where we developed our strategic plan and bringing those business community people in. We do that every so often as well to look at the data and what is the data telling us, where do we need to grow. And I really think in Oxford it is a very authentic process where sometimes when you do all these plans and you have all these plans to do, sometimes it becomes just words on a piece of paper, but I really feel like in Oxford we take that very seriously.
So those plans, and how do you monitor and assess instructional programs, activities, and materials?
Yeah, I think that through those meetings 3 times a year, again, we're all evaluating those together. And when you do that as a group, there's about 60, 70 people that's actually looking at data. We put all these charts up on the wall. We have historical data that we look at electronically. And just by doing that 3 times a year, and then we also visit schools 3 times a year to hear from the continuous improvement teams and look at instruction, I think that's kind of goes in with number 4 as well. We just kind of do it together.
Right. So you have a way, you have diagnostic tools that you use and identify and apply instructional improvement, and you found a way here to streamline that. So can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yes, we were very overwhelmed with all the pieces of data that we had.
Right.
So we have worked with a software company to build custom software for us to give us a dashboard so that teachers are not having to do hand item analysis, and that it pulls in all the data sources plus some of the teacher made things that we're doing, and it puts it in a dashboard, and then there's drill down reports available. And so it's called Centrifuge, and we're very excited that we're in the beginnings of that, but we think that's going to make things so much more efficient for our teachers, and teachers are going to have to spend less time doing hand counting and poring over multiple pieces of data and having 6 different portals they're having to look into. And so hopefully that'll kind of bring it together and make it more efficient for them.
That's taken my advantage away, because that was like what I was able to do so well when I was in the classroom.
Yes, it
was manage all that stuff. So
yes.
All right, well this question could put us here for a while, but what are the greatest difficulties of this position?
I think time to do the work is huge, and I think too probably just it is hard to build capacity when you have a small staff in a small school system. We've got some great folks that work very hard that are overworked. But one of the things that I think that we're trying to do better is develop teacher leaders to build capacity. But there again, when you ask those great people to do those things and they're more than willing to do it, they also have all of the things that go along with the classroom instruction and grading papers that are on top of that. So I would say time is probably the number 1 biggest issue that we have. And then I would say probably second to that, which goes along with time, is when you make a change or when you're changing or evolving, again, it takes time for people to understand how to change, why they're changing. And so I think for the most part our teachers embrace change as long as they kind of know why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going. Yes.
All right, so what are the factors that interfere with achieving district goals and objectives?
I think that probably going in too many different directions.
Right.
You have all these latest and greatest things, and we want to be progressive, but we have to stay balanced. We have to stay balanced. We can't go from one extreme to the other. And just staying focused and not getting sidetracked, and I think is huge. But I think you can get too much going on, and we have a lot going on, but I think you can get too much going on, and it divides that focus and that attention.
So the next question asks us to characterize our curriculum here in Oxford, and it gives us three choices of knowledge-centered, learner-centered, and society-centered. So where do you think we would fall in Oxford with that?
Probably more heavily in the knowledge-centered. We are embarking, especially at our high school, with more project-based learning activities in our career tech realm. I'd like to see that kind of merged into our math and science, especially math and science, but maybe other courses as well. And we are trying to give students more choice, maybe not in that they have to learn the standard or not, but how they learn or how they're assessed in that standard. But I would say overall, knowledge-centered is where we are.
All right, so the next question and the last question is, what aspects of your curriculum help you choose that characterization? And I think you pretty much answered that question with your response already.
Yeah,
So.
and a lot of our time is spent on standards right now. And we are much farther along than we were 5 years ago when the new standards were rolled out. But I think as we know more about those standards, I think we will, and they're embedded in what we do, I think that we will always stay true to those standards and teach those minimum skills. But I think we can venture out a little bit more and definitely integrate it a little bit more. Yep.
All right, thank you for your time and your interview, and I really appreciate it. Always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you, Nick. I enjoyed it as well.